Chris, are we ready on your end?
I believe we are ready. Holly, are you ready to go with roll call?
Yep.
Super.
Wendy Hess.
Present.
Jason Hoffman.
Sure.
Bridget Edson.
I'm present.
Mindy Benson.
Present.
Michelle Bischoff.
Present.
Curtis Welton.
He's on the go-to meeting, Holly, but I think he's having issues with
Present. We got me now.
David Ness.
Here.
Dan Schaefer.
Here.
Dan Fank.
Present.
Jason Slutenhofer. Rhonda Broadus.
Here.
Haley Nichols. Cindy Height.
Here.
Peter Huffman.
Here.
Michael Strausser. Keith Hogue.
Here.
Patrick Updike. Lake DeRushi.
Here.
Jessica Turba.
Here.
And is there any legislative members on the phone? Okay. We do have a quorum.
All right, thank you everybody for joining today, whether in person or virtual. I'll entertain a motion for today's agenda.
Benson. Bischoff.
Benson and Bishop, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the meeting minutes from January 13th.
Bank will make that motion.
Schaefer will second.
Nick and Schaefer, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed. All right, Chris, on to the SWIC report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to start off today with a quick update on interstate interoperability. We've been working on that with several regular updates for the last several months, but then we didn't mention much about it last month. We did approve Minnesota ECN last month for level 1 access, and what that's going to allow them to do is complete a part of their project where they're actually going to start working on equipment installations now. The end result of that will be that most of, if not all, of the Iowa PSAPs that border Minnesota will have an over-the-air connection to Armor, which is their statewide system. And on the Armor side, they're actually going to take 3 consolettes and integrate them into Armor so that our regional calls for 31 and 21 and a patching talk group are available cross-border. Effectively, what that's going to allow us to do is Iowa agencies will be able to reach across the border via LMR to Minnesota and vice versa. And even the 2 states, State Radio Center, will have a means to talk to each other and work on transfers of things like pursuits or work collaboratively on various things that happen across the border. So that's exciting stuff. They are still waiting for their equipment to arrive, though, on the Minnesota side of the border. So we're still looking at several months ETA on that project. But once that's done, we'll have a really, really good framework to build off of with our other states. And given the progress of this particular project, I've reached out to the state of Illinois to rekindle some of those early discussions we had. It looks like we're working on a tentative interstate interoperability meeting with them in April. So if you start thinking about how long our contiguous borders are with some of these states, we'll have roughly half of our contiguous borders with neighboring states taken care of, hopefully within the next couple of years. Keep in mind that a lot of the initial legwork with Illinois is done because we already have a formal agreement with them on joining each other's neighboring statewide systems. And at this point, a lot of it's going to be revolving around how do we want that cross-border communication to actually work and function. So stay tuned for updates on that. We're also continuing to work on duratio response in Clinton. This goes back to August of 2020. That SDR deployment is still steady state, but it does sound like it's starting to wind down as Clinton has nearly completed its recovery and build out into Essex. Once that deployment is officially deemed as complete, we will move the STR back to the Des Moines metro area for service and maintenance, and then at that point it will be staged and ready to go for the next deployment. One thing we may be wise to consider long term is to look at maybe some of the 700 megahertz federal deployable channels to use on that trailer. Depending on what some of the licensing things look like for that, we may be able to have it set up so that if we ever needed to, we could park the mobile command within certain proximities of the STR, light them both up, and then we'd have an extended area of wide area trunking that's being supplied by 2 deployable vehicles. So operationally, that would give us a lot of extra advantages. We would need to look into the licensing of those channels, though, to see what that would actually take, but that may be something we can work on long term. From a fiscal component of the deployment, our reimbursement with that did get held up a bit, but we think we have the issue identified and resolved, and we'll hopefully have that buttoned up here within the next week or so. A bit of news for the group here. We were recently awarded a grant from HSCMD for a cache of 25 radios. That order has been placed, and we will be working on programming, keying, and staging of those radios once they arrive. These will be multi-band radios that will function in VHF and 700 and 800 megahertz. They will be fully programmed with the full suite of Essex interoperable talk groups, and then also they will be keyed according to how some other things play out within the board with interoperable encryption. The total grant award is $124,199, so that's good news for us as we've been talking for a while about rebuilding our cache and updating it with newer equipment. Continue to work with our training chair and vice chair on Isicsb regional training. The logistics are still being worked out, but we are kind of having some discussions about perhaps some virtual trainings, and I'll let Chair Nichols or Vice Chair Broadus cover that in the training committee report. We are still offering one-on-one agency training for interoperability talk groups and status board. Again, we've had several more agencies recently request this type of training, and it looks like we're going to be able to make it happen for them. Finally, received the updated source code for status board from Minnesota yesterday. That source code has been aggregated along with the release notes and then transmitted to our developer. They gave us an initial cost estimate in January. I've already said, hey, is this cost estimate still valid? And if it is, we'll go ahead and get that order signed and we'll move forward with the actual update. The initial cost of the update was estimated to be around $3,200, so we'll see if that cost maintains itself as they actually have a chance to get hands on the new source code, and then we'll go from there. That's my report, Mr. Chair. I can go ahead and take any questions.
Chris, back to the frequencies on the STR and the mobile command. Are they shared today? Are they the exact same frequency pairs or?
Right. So this goes back to our channel plan when we were first doing the Essex deployment. When we did that, we had a state pack of 700 megahertz channels that we allocated for every Essex site, whether they were going to be actually broadcasting and receiving radio signals or not. So in some cases, even our microwave-only hops already have a pre-designated frequency pack assigned to them. One thing we also did with our frequency plan was we set aside 6 of those channels that are not used anywhere else in the state for those deployable vehicles. However, given the utility that we've seen with that, it may be advantageous for us to maybe expand that a little bit. So we have one vehicle perhaps use those and another use something else that's designed for deployments. It would give us a little bit more tactical capability with that. So to answer your question, as of this point, yes, those frequencies are shared amongst the deployable vehicles, and we may have an opportunity to perhaps expand that a little bit more.
Hearing no further report, we'll move on to the 911 Council report. Chair Durushi.
Thank you. Not a ton to report today. Again, the 911 Council did meet just prior to the Isicsb meeting that is posted to our website, I believe already, if anyone is interested. Primarily later this month, we will have our first training session of PSAP leadership training that has been developed out of our strategic plan. It has not been held before. It is full at the moment. So we have 50 people attending that. We are going to record kind of each session that we have. over the course of the 6 hours, and that will be available for later viewing. We will have that course additional times throughout the year, either virtual or hybrid or back in person. So other opportunities to attend that training. Really, that is all I have, so I would take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Lost my agenda there, but I think we're on to the user group committee, and I have not heard from Chair Schlutenhofer. Would Chris or Vice Chair Dennert be available?
Rob, do you want to take that, or do you want me to do it?
I think you better. I don't think I was there. Was I?
I think you're right. So I'll go ahead and take it then. User group committee met last month. We reviewed, I believe, 4 applications. All 4 came back positive with respect to loading. There were no further questions on those applications as well, so they are underneath new business this month for final approval, and I can cover each application once we get to new business. Mr. Chair, I can take any questions.
Hearing none, let's move on to the Finance Committee.
Right. So finance last month, our expenditures for the the Interoperability Fund were $12,520.04. That gives us a remaining balance for this fiscal year in total for $189,720 or $700.20. Keep in mind this is a non-reverting fund, so we do have carryover funds that are available to us, so we don't have to spend this all in one fiscal year. As said before, we are still waiting on our reimbursement for the deployment, but it seems like we have that locked in, and that'll hopefully move here relatively soon. One thing I do want to make the board aware of with respect to finances is that with one of the things we were looking at for expenses recently was possibly what it would take to update the Essex board website to an updated version of Drupal. Drupal is this back-end framework that our website is built on. There's a lot that goes into it, but when we met with the vendor WebSpec, we were floated a price of $15,000 to $20,000 to do the update. And when we pressed the developer for some information on that, they said Drupal 9, which is what we could in theory be moving to, is about 3 years old, and typically these platforms have a lifespan of 5 to 6 years. So in theory, we're already halfway through that lifespan, and we could be in the same boat again in a few years. The one thing that we're going to do to try to make that, maybe we'll call it the pinch point of cost go away, is to migrate the board website to underneath the DPS umbrella, which already has an existing account with WebSpec to save that money. In theory, to move the website, it would cost us only $500 to do so. And the fit, form, and function would remain the same. It'll give us a few extra avenues for making sure that development is streamlined. And basically, it's going to save us a bunch of money long term. So the thought process was, let's just go ahead and do that. We can do a URL alias, so people can still type in isicsb.iowa.gov and get to the site. So there will be no functional change for the end users of that website, but it's going to save us a lot of money by going that route. And that's the finance report, Mr. Chair. I'll go ahead and take any questions.
All right, on to the Governance Committee, and Chair Huffman, are you able to present, Peter, or do you want Chris to take care of that for you?
I don't know how well it would work.
Chris, are you?
I can fill in for you, Peter. I hope you're feeling better. Governance Committee met I guess this week. We reviewed 4 standards. We reviewed a sub-regional standard that will be up for approval later on in the agenda under new business. And we also reviewed the encryption standards that were forwarded to us by the Operations Committee and Standards Working Group. During discussions within those standards, we found them to be appropriate and moved them up to the board. The one thing that's coming with the encryption standards and the policy that goes along with them is that it's probably going to be beneficial to post this for public comment just to make sure we get all the feedback we would need to from our agency stakeholders. So all those are under new business today, since we'll probably be looking at maybe doing public comment with the encryption documents, the policies and the standards. They are a separate line item, and we can address them separately under new business later on during the meeting. That's the report, Mr. Chair. I can take any questions on behalf of Vice Chair Huffman.
Hearing none, we'll move on to Operations Committee. Chair Bischoff.
Thank you, Chair. The Operations Committee has met twice since our last meeting, and we are discussing legacy interoperability policies that exist throughout the state. The one that has our attention at the moment is how ambulances talk to hospitals. We're just at the very beginning of conversation on what it will take to update that policy and if there's an appetite in which to do so. And continued some conversation in regards to encryption, as those policies, as the SWIC just mentioned, will be going out for comment if the board so chooses under new business. That is the activity of operations. What questions are there for me? Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, back to you for outreach.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. The agenda, or not the agenda, the newsletter was sent out on time by Holly again, so thank you, Holly, for getting that out. There was a request last month to link the new legislative report in that newsletter, and I believe that has been done as well. We continue to look for interesting content for the newsletter as well, in particular the spotlight of the month. So we will be requesting that if anybody in your agency has done something really interesting in the name of interoperability, please let us know. We'd be happy to do a spotlight on them and include them in the next newsletter. Otherwise, Mr. Chair, that's the extent of the report today. I can take any questions.
Thank you. On to the Training Committee.
As far as the training committee, obviously we're always still working on the training materials, but the three major things that we're working on right now is more regional, so I'm going to turn that back over to Chris.
Right. So we've been talking about having an Essex regional training session now for a while. And when you start looking at some of the logistics that's associated with this and the availability of personnel to attend these things, there's some roadblocks that have popped up. It seems like everybody has a lot going on, which is completely understandable. And it's kind of starting to look like that maybe a virtualized session or two would be easier for agencies. This would probably be something where we start kind of just doing an overview of the interoperability talk groups once again. And then we also cover some of the new stuff, such as our air-to-ground standard that we just passed recently, since that's a pretty significant shift for us. We talk about the updated pursuit standard, which is also a shift for us as well, and also cover status board and status board updates. It seems like we can probably condense that into about an hour's or so worth of training, and that would probably be a good way to hit a lot of personnel and ensure that any updated training gets out to agencies in a timely manner. Travel for some agencies has popped up as an issue over the last couple of years as well, and this sort of mitigates some of that. So, Vice Chair Broadus, I will go ahead and pass it back to you.
I really don't have much more for the topic.
All right, thank you both. On to the Technology Committee, and I don't believe Chair Updike was able to join today, so Chris, you might have this one as well.
Right, thank you. Yes, Chair Updike could not be here today. As far as the technology meeting goes, they did some more looks at the loading analysis process that we're doing with applicants now to further understand how that loading analysis works and functions. And then in the other meeting, we actually talked a lot about what radio over IP could look like. There's the capability now to use some sort of gateway devices to map a donor radio so that it can go out over IP, over some sort of broadband network, and then also some other built-in functionality within the Essex platform as well, with some radios that can roam from Essex onto something like LTE. We kind of looked at that holistically. We're just starting to scratch the surface on that, and we will probably have more meetings on that going forward, as that is a pretty far-reaching topic. One provider of a radio over IP solution, or you may hear some people call it ROIP, has reached out to us and wants to do sort of an informational presentation on what they have and what they offer. So we will probably be scouring the landscape to see what's available from industry and then going from there. That's the report from the Technology Committee. I'll go ahead and take any questions.
Hearing none, we'll move on to the Firstnet Broadband Committee and Chair Bischoff.
Thank you, Chair. The Firstnet Broadband Committee did meet this week, and we received our quarterly update from the RAN Director, Andy Sackrider, on the state of the network. The AT&T, I guess I won't steal too much thunder from the AT&T report, but they are on track, and they are building they're over-delivering on the plan that was issued to the state. So that was all good news. Also provided the annual update to the governor with AT&T, and that report also went exceptionally well. What questions are there for me?
Hearing none, we've reached the point on the agenda where we have information sharing amongst board members. Any questions, concerns? All right. 16B, the system admin report. Connie Stuffelbeam has this today.
Yes, I'm right here, and I'm pleased to be able to report in January we had an increase of 609 radios, giving us a total of 27,478 radios. The talk groups were up slightly by 3, which gives us the talk group total of 2,683 talk groups. And the push-to-talk transmissions were down by about 1.8%. And they are at 2,187,788 push-to-talks. And at this moment, we have 4,259 radios on the system. Is there any questions from anyone? Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Next on the agenda is the Firstnet Authority. I think I saw Kevin Nida on the line.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and visitors. Just want to give you a quick update. Our February board meeting occurred yesterday in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The joint board meeting of the Firstnet board and 4 committees are governance and personnel, network and technology, advocacy and finance, provided presentations and was open to the public for via webcast. I hope you received the webcast that I sent the evening prior. We just received that. Board Chair Stephen Benjamin, who is the new chair, opened the meeting, noting the 10-year anniversary of Firstnet legislation on February 22nd of this month, so just 12 days away. Through the hard work of the organization, our public safety partners and AT&T, Firstnet's changed the game and created a whole new thriving marketplace for public safety technology. With regard to the committee reports, the Public Safety Advocacy Committee, or as we refer to as PSAC, they reported that this last quarter they've been working with users. They have a user working group, and they're looking at sign-on and push-to-talk applications. They provided a January webinar for next-gen public safety devices and Firstnet central ecosystem enhancement. The PSAC also welcomed a new member from the EMS community, Jason Rhodes, National Association of state emergency medical service officials. Our market engagement office highlights, we're working with Western fire chiefs based on the lessons learned from the recent fires this year, last year, and the previous year, 2020. They're continuing their collaboration on various topics, education, training, and operational use. So also happy to report that the Department of Interior National Interagency Fire Center procured about $5 million of equipment. We're going to have more information on how they're going to be deploying that, but they also have a 5-year plan to fully integrate the First Responder Network Authority and Firstnet into their response plan. Fairfax County, Virginia, we've been testing the Firstnet identity management features for public safety there. Again, learning a lot more about what the needs are and how to fine-tune some of these applications. Major County Sheriffs of America examined efficacy and effectiveness of the Firstnet Z Access and Firstnet push-to-talk services in unique operational environments. And our Aviation and Marine Working Group recently formed, and we sent out an invite to the those on our email list in the state of Iowa. And we, across the nation, got about 60 responses. We still like to pick up a couple from Iowa if available. We want to make sure all the states are represented. But essentially, they're going to be looking at broadband deployment, broadband use in the aviation and maritime professions. So we want to make sure we get that right. In addition to the board meeting, we have a couple of articles in the update that I sent to Holly, and I also amended it to add the highlights from the board. PSAC profile, National Congress of American Indians. We have a couple of articles and links to FirstNet deployables being used during the pandemic. We have new episodes, pod episodes under development, and also a quick clip on YouTube on FirstNet expanding coverage in North Carolina. I know it's not the state of Iowa, but it does go through some of the processes building the site, which may be interest to the board members. Our next upcoming board meetings are May, August, and November. So New Hampshire in May, August will be TBD, and Washington, D.C. in November, and these are all going to be virtual as well. So also want to just stand by our commitment for contract management, oversight, and public safety advocacy. And at this time, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Kevin, for the comprehensive report. And on the AT&T side, is Tyler Hershard on, or somebody else from the AT&T group?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay, or should I move up?
You're good.
Okay. Yeah, so as Chair Bischoff indicated, we did have a presentation during our Firstnet subcommittee meeting to discuss an added feature that's been added to the Firstnet Central portal and available to customers, which is the ability to electronically request deployables. So this is kind of the process that you're looking at now. So what the addition allows for is the ability to submit an electronic ticket to request a deployable based on the location and nature of the outage that already includes the account information from the particular account from Firstnet Central that you're submitting the ticket from. So it shows up directly as a tile on the Firstnet Central dashboard. From there, after submitting the ticket and providing the required information on the right, it then goes through a list of a few available statuses. So on the next one, you can see, the next slide, you can see that the statuses go from accepted, they've received your ticket, to canceled if it needs to be canceled, or declined, or stacked. Stacked means that the request has been received. However, because of the nature of the location that the deployable is being requested for, it needs further analysis due to zoning or restrictions of that nature. En route means the SAC hold has been deployed from its location. On scene is self-explanatory, as well as on air. So you'll get email notifications. On the next slide shows you what those email notifications look like each time the ticket has been updated, and as it progresses through the process. This submission process does kick off the exact same process that calling myself or calling one of the other Firstnet solutions consultants around the state does, except for this solution or this option is obviously a little more designed around pre-planned events because it pulls your account information and that sort of thing, adds some convenience, but obviously if you're in the midst of an emergency, pick up the phone is going to be a little bit easier than logging into your account. So these other options still exist. You can always reach out to me directly and we can request the deployable that way. But it is worthy to note that this kicks off the same ROG triage process that myself and the stakeholders on the ROG team are involved in. So I'll request that Holly distributes this to the members of the board, and any questions can be answered in here or online or offline as well. But we did also have our RAN update provided by Andy Sackrider. So yes, we are ahead of schedule for our EOC, which concludes at the end of this month. We're about 25% ahead on our commitment to the state for that end of cycle. Now the increase in the investment and increase in the coverage is still expected to continue. We're going through a process with our RAN team now to elevate the locations and sites that need to be included in this year's and next year's build plan. But we do have those roadmaps coming as well. So as coverage expands, the nature of the build out in my reports every month will go from coverage increase to saturation and density increase. So I will be reporting on the microsites from now on, as well as the macro sites that are added, because there'll be a lot more of them coming forward. We also did attend the governor's update meetings. We provided an update to the lieutenant governor about the existing updates, existing progress on the build out and subscribers, and also a couple of notes to help us pursue that goal of adoption. We also discussed remaining locations around the state that need to be backfilled and are a part of our 2022 plan for coverage build out. We also discussed an event that we planned for the end of March, which will be the Firstnet Roadshow. This will be the first one since 2020, before the pandemic. So this will be our first in-person one. It'll be March 29th at Marshalltown Fire at their training facility. And I'll send out additional information on that invite, but more details to come on that. And that concludes my report. If there's any questions, I'll take them.
All right, thank you both for your thorough reports. CISA ECD update, Jim Stromberg.
Thank you. CISA is working through the process to hire a Region 7 Emergency Communications Coordinator to replace Jim Lundstedt. The list of applicants has been whittled down and interviews are forthcoming. I recently received some information that gives me cause to remind everyone that land mobile radio jamming devices are real and may even be found in the Midwest. It's important to understand what to do when faced with potential signal jamming. As an example, changing locations, switching to a high-powered mobile radio, or even using a different technology like a landline. I'm going to attach in the chat section of this meeting today a link to CISA's Radio Frequency Interference Best Practices Guidebook, and I encourage you to take a peek at that. On January 27th, CISA launched a tribal webpage. Of course, tribal and physical threats impact, digital and physical threats impact tribal entities just like non-tribal entities. And this new website aims to increase awareness and the use of available CISA services and resources by tribal communities. And CISA is always happy to help Iowa work on its SCIP goals. To that end, CISA is currently providing Iowa with 7 incidents of technical assistance. First is a COMEX. That was something that was first requested in 2019 and had been postponed for some time for a variety of different reasons, and that is being resurrected. We have a scoping call coming up soon. There's a development of a field operations guide and a tactical interoperability communications plan, something that Swick Myers is very involved in and is moving forward. The delivery of a communications unit leader class, the delivery of a communications unit technician class, and the delivery of an incident tactical dispatcher class. And finally, CISA is supporting Iowa in a land mobile radio cyber assessment. I'd be happy to take your questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Standards Working Group, Swick Myers.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Standards met a couple weeks ago. We discussed the 4 standards that are actually under new business today. These include an Essex standard that discusses how a traffic encryption key would be defined as being compromised, encryption key storage location number and key ID, over-the-air rekeying, and then also we discussed the draft standard for sub-regional talk groups. As you may recall, the sub-regional talk groups was a pilot program started with the Greater Des Moines metro area a couple of years ago. All of these would be considered quote-unquote new standards, and they were moved on to governance for a final review, and they are on the agenda today.
All right. Anything for the information sharing framework update?
Right. Yes, I can roll into that. Blake, I believe Blake is on the phone right now. So Blake, a fairly rudimentary update this month. We had a lot of meetings recently with CISA to go over the survey that was going to be sent out to PSAPs, and we were able to whittle it down quite a bit because we're fortunate that we have a lot of commonalities amongst PSAPs with respect to the EZNet. I'll let Blake speak at length about that if he wants to, but the moral of the story was we went over the survey with CISA. We were able to whittle down some of the things, and that survey has been sent out to PSAPs to complete. I think the conclusion or the due date for that is in the next couple of days. Once CISA gets that data back from the PSAPs, they'll work on aggregating it, and then we'll continue on with this project from there. Blake, if you're available, is there anything you'd want to add to that?
Not much, just that the things that we did whittle out or take on as the state as part of that survey that we were able to answer on behalf of the entire state as far as 911 capabilities go, we submitted that aspect of the survey as well. So our part is complete, and I think at this point we're just waiting for the locals to get their survey back.
All right, thank you, Blake. That's the report on that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. On to new business. It's been referenced a couple times, the new user approval. Chris?
Right.
Rob?
Rob, do you want to take that, or would you like me to take it?
Go ahead, please.
All right. We have 4 applications up for approval today. First, we have Farmers Electric Cooperative. They are looking at using Essex for their electrical recovery operations and possibly some additional interoperability with other cooperatives going forward. They are up for approval today for level 2 access. The loading on this application was found to be appropriate and able to be handled by Essex with no issues. Jasper County is updating their level of access. Previously, they had gone through the approval process sometime around 2017 for basic level 1 connectivity within the PSAP. They are looking at upgrading to level 2 with more radios and a handful of talk groups as well for some level of operations or backup operations. City of Nevada is signing up for a couple of talk groups as well with level 2. That would be for a lot of the public works departments within the city. And then the city of Osceola is the point of contact for the application update for level 3 access. This would include Clark County agencies as well. They are tying in core connected consoles to Essex, and they're also going to be utilizing some of the newer radios that are capable of doing some pretty cool things as well. All 4 of those applications, once again, were reviewed for loading. They are all deemed to be appropriate, and they are before the board for approval today. So, Mr. Chair, I will pass it back to you for any further action.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the 4 new users as identified.
Bischoff will move.
Mr. Chair,
Benson,
this
second.
is Blake. would I be in order for a quick question on one of those? This is Blake.
Surely.
Just a question on the Farmers Mutual one. Have we approved RECs before, and was there any discussion on that based on like trying to follow normal emergency management protocols in the event of a disaster? Just any concerns with going directly to resource owners and not going through emergency management?
Right. So with the Farmers Electrical Cooperative, they're eligible for use under our current MOA. We've had some other ones go through already as well, like TIP and SIPCO. They're in their very early stages of the ones that are migrating to Essex. And I think there's a lot of room there for further discussion with these cooperatives. As an example, some type of regional power restoration interoperability talk groups, or ways for them to communicate with HSEMD for those types of emergency operations center activations, Blake. So to answer your question, yes, we've had a few go through already, and it's going to open up a lot of the doors for, I think, what you're referencing here as well.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, no concerns. I just wanted to make sure people were thinking that side of it. So I'm good. Thanks.
All right, I think we've had a motion and a second and some discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, on to new business, item B, encryption documents.
Chair, I'll be carrying or discussing that item, bringing that item forward. I draw everyone's attention to the executive summary. It gives an oversight of the attached policies. The real nutshell of the encryption is that the Operations Committee has discussed the need to provide encryption within the interoperable construct, and these policies in some cases update and in some cases are new standards that provide the framework to ensure that the encryption stays secure and is used appropriately. It is under the leadership of Swick Myers that he kind of guided us through this process, and with him sitting on national committees, knowing what the landscape looks like and how best to position Iowa so that we can have secure encrypted talk groups. And at this point, the policies have been drafted or revised and are ready for public comment. Rather than walking through all of them, I'll just leave it at that and entertain any questions. The recommendation from operations as well as governance and standards working is that these policies go out as a package and that they have a 60-day comment period. What questions are there regarding these policies? And Chris, would you like to add anything to the introduction of these policies going out for comment?
Yeah, I can add a few things here with some knowledge of other states. Other states have done some level of encrypted interoperability on their systems in the past. The framework for them has worked, but we have a unique opportunity with our technical standing with the equipment we have with Essex and the level of advanced equipment we have to do some pretty neat things with several items such as over-the-air rekeying and also coming out of the chute with a statewide encryption management plan so that we resolve conflicts before they start. One of the big things I think that's happened nationally is that you may have an agency encrypt something and then they want to share their encryption material with another agency, but they can't do that because they didn't do any type of pre-coordination with each other. We've laid out a pretty good framework for that. We've also gone into defining, I think, which is a big one, what would actually constitute an encryption key compromise on a interoperable resource. Depending on your operational picture, that compromise and how to mitigate it can vary widely. And I think as a group, we've done a very nice job of outlining what that compromise would actually be defined as, and then in some cases actually defined what a resolution for that could look like. The other thing that we've done very nicely here, and I commend everybody that's put in the time on these documents, is we've actually gone so far to designate encrypted interoperable encryption keys. This would be something where, let's say you want to use an encrypted talk group, we've actually gone out and designated those, and we've actually reserved those location numbers and IDs for those keys with the National Law Enforcement Communications Center. What that does for us is it gets what we're doing in a national database, so if we have any federal agencies coming in, they can reach out to NLEC and say, what's Iowa using? NLEC will tell them what we're using, and then at that point, they know that they have that space open in their radios for our stuff. So collectively, as a group within the committees and within the standards working group, I think we've done a fine job in assembling these documents, and we are positioned for any changes that may be coming within Iowa or within the federal level long term. So, Chair Bischoff, I'll pass it back to you.
Great, thank you, Swickmeyers. Are there any questions from the board on this item?
I'm not sure that it's not critical since we're just putting it out for comment, but I'll entertain a motion to put it out for 60-day notice for public comment. I heard Bishop and Hoffman. Okay.
Hoffman.
Got it. By saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Long time.
Chair says. Time over to so that is why it says